North Korea today accused the newly inaugurated Trump administration of hostility, taking issue with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's reference to the regime as a, quote, rogue state during a recent media interview. All this amid much speculation of another summit between the U.S. and North Korea. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Monday, February 3rd. For those of you celebrating the Lunar New Year, hope your festivities last week were good. Now we start this work week with a look at prospects of possible engagement between the U.S. and North Korea amid the return of the Trump administration to the White House. For this, I have Cheon Soram with U.S. government-funded broadcaster Radio Free Asia here in the studio. Soram, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I also have Celio Fioretti with French daily Le Croix. Celio, it's great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
Right, Soram, we'll start with you. North Korea's delegate to the UN office in Geneva has reaffirmed his regime's dedication to nuclear weapons. Let's begin with his remarks and their relevance.
To Chelsea, North Korea's delegate to the UN office at Geneva made it clear once again that Pyongyang has no intention of giving up its nuclear weapons. And he blamed the US for escalating tensions on the Korean peninsula. Joe described North Korea as a responsible nuclear weapon state during a UN conference and on disarmament. His comment came in response to criticism from UN member states over Pyongyang's nuclear and missile programs. He targeted the US, saying US political and military provocations are the root cause of triggering armed conflicts and undermining regional security. It's important to note that the remarks came shortly after Trump referred North Korea as a nuclear power. His reference has raised the speculation about the possible shift of the U.S. policy towards North Korea, whether or not Washington is going to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. However, many believe that Washington will stick to its long-standing policy of complete denuclearization. If the U.S. were to take that step, if U.S. is going to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state, it's going to bring serious results, and including strong backlash from allies like South Korea and Japan.
Right, indeed. And before we delve further into that, Celio, after the remarks by the North Korean delegate to the UN in Geneva, the regime tested a cruise missile system. Do tell us more about this particular test and its broader implications.
Indeed, North Korea said it tested a cruise missile system, its third known weapons display this year, and vowed the toughest response to what it called the escalation of US and South Korean military drills targeting the North. North Korea views US military training with South Korea as an invasion rehearsal, though Washington and Seoul have disproved this claim, repeatedly saying their drills are defensive in nature. In recent years, the US and South Korea have expanded their military exercise in response to North Korea's advancing military program. The launch of this cruise missile suggests North Korea will maintain its run of weapon tests and a confrontational stance against the US. And for now, even though President Trump expressed his desire to meet Kim Jong-un, we don't see any change of behavior for the North Korea. This test also comes after the last declaration of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in December during a 5-day plenary meeting, the Workers' Party, the ruling party in North Korea. Kim Jong-un called the US the most reactionary states that regards anti-communism as its invariable state policy. KCNA, the North Korean state media, didn't elaborate on the anti-US strategy that was explained at this plenary meeting, but it said that Kim Jong-un set forth tasks for its military to boost its capabilities and also its technology advancements, and also to bolster the morale of the North Korean military. Overall, this first missile test is the first one since Trump came to the White House in January. And for a while, the regime didn't really answer or comment on what Trump said about North Korea, but it did this morning calling U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's comment claiming that North Korea is a rogue state. The regime answered by calling it a grave provocation.
Right, indeed. And quite a number of media here in South Korea called that North Korea's first condemnation of the newly inaugurated Trump administration. Soram, the tough rhetoric and the cruise missile test was then followed by an actual visit to a nuclear weapons facility by Kim Jong-un. What appears to be the purpose of these latest tough words and actions by North Korea, do you think?
Kim Jong-un visited nuclear production sites and emphasized the importance of increasing nuclear capabilities. Kim's latest actions and remarks came just 6 days after Trump mentioned the possibility of dialogue with Kim Jong-un. So this suggests that for now, North Korea is focused on strengthening its nuclear power rather than engaging in negotiations. A few days after Trump referred to North Korea as a nuclear power, the White House National Security Council reaffirmed that the U.S. remains committed to the complete denuclearization policy towards North Korea. So this came after North Korea's cruise missile test and Kim Jong-un's nuclear facility visits. So Kim's nuclear site visits may signal that North Korea wants to strengthen its nuclear capabilities to gain leverage in potential negotiation with the U.S. in the future. Also, the recent missile test and the visit appear to be a measured provocation, expressing dissatisfaction with U.S.-South Korea joint military drill. Although White House reaffirmed the complete denuclearization policy towards North Korea, it's clear that Trump is open to the dialogue with North Korea since he mentioned Kim Jong-un many times in the past weeks. So while the U.S. has stated its willingness to talk to North Korea, Pyongyang has yet to respond. So we will have to wait and see how the situation unfolds.
Right, and staying with what Soram has just said, Celio, during an interview with Fox News that aired, I believe, on January 24th, U.S. President Donald Trump spoke about reaching out to North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Pundits claim that if a summit does indeed take place between these two individuals, Mr. Trump, of course, and Kim Jong-un, the talks this time around will be very tough. What exactly do they mean, and what are your thoughts?
Indeed, so U.S. President Donald Trump said he would reach out to North Korea, Kim Jong-un, raising the possibility of a new start of their bromance diplomacy, as many people called it 5 years ago. Recently, Trump referred to Kim Jong-un as a smart guy and someone he can get along with. He seems to have the same mindset as he had back in 2018. During his first term, Trump met Kim 3 times, even though their country are technically still at war to one another. But his friendly relation back then was not enough to make any deal happen, and after 3 meetings, the diplomacy came to a bitter end. Even if Trump wants to start the dialogue again, there are no signs that Kim Jong-un would actually be interested. It's unclear whether or how Kim Jong-un, emboldened by also his stronger alliance with Russia now and his own country military advance he made in the past 5 years, will respond to this overture of Trump. Since Trump last met Kim Jong-un 5 years ago, North Korea missile program changed a lot, and the country situation changed a lot. And while in 2018 Kim Jong-un offered some concession on his nuclear arsenal, now maybe he would ask for a bigger price for the U.S. to give up on some of his weapon. Also, after this failure of negotiation in Hanoi and Singapore, Kim Jong-un vowed to not engage anymore with Washington and has doubled down on building even more greater capabilities, military capabilities. So despite Trump's flattering comments about Kim all throughout his campaign or his first few days in the White House, it's unclear whether the North Korean leader would actually respond to it. Following the collapse of the round of meetings that we had in 2018, now Kim Jong-un has a new friend, a new ally in Vladimir Putin. He sent 12,000 troops in Ukraine to help Russia's invasions, also sending weapons and munition to Putin. So maybe he's not looking to make any deal with the West anymore. So I'm guessing we'll have to see once Trump is more settled down in the White House in the coming months, what will be his policy towards the North and what Kim Jong-un's answer will be at the time.
Right. Well, in the meantime, Soram, last Friday, I believe, American magazine The National Interest shared the thoughts of two North Korean defectors about the possible demands that may be made by Mr. Trump and Kim Jong-un in the event of another summit. Could you tell us a bit more about the potential demands and their prospects?
So actually, RFA did an interview with one of the defectors featured in the magazine, and he also shared his thoughts on what Trump and Kim could ask for another summit. So Lee Jong-ho, the defector, he was the high-ranking official when he was in North Korea. He suggested three potential demands. First is the return of USS Pueblo, and the second is dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities. And the third one is the economic cooperation at the Wonsan-Galma coastal tourist zone. So the USS Pueblo is a US Navy ship that North Korea seized in international waters back in 1968. North Korea has long been used the ship for anti-American propaganda. So its return could signal that Kim Jong-un is seriously considering improving its relationship with the US, and at the same time, the return also might signify a major political victory for Trump. And second point is the dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities. Yongbyon is central to North Korea's nuclear program, so its complete destruction would be a big win for the US in terms of denuclearization policy. But for North Korea, this could be seen as a significant loss. Finally, the economic cooperation at the Wonsan-Galma coastal tourist zone. Recently, Trump mentioned that North Korea has tremendous condo capabilities. Kim has been developing this project over 10 years, and it's scheduled to open in June. So economic cooperation in this area could be a less risky way for both sides to begin conversation. On these three options, the dismantlement of the Yongbyon nuclear facilities seems to be a little bit too bold move for North Korea, because there are lots of losses for North Korea. However, economic cooperation in Wonsan-Galma might be a good starting point for a small deal. It could be an ideal first step toward broader negotiations.
Right, the first step then. Celio, Soram mentioned earlier, Mr. Trump, he referred to North Korea as a nuclear power, which triggered quite a lot of concern about a potential shift in US policy with regard to North Korea. What do you suppose are the prospects of North Korea being recognized as a nuclear weapons state? I mean, how would France, which is one of the 5 formally recognized states possessing nuclear weapons, respond?
Indeed, there's some tension between the allies, between South Korea and the US. Denuclearization of North Korea is a prerequisite for global stability, as South Korea reminded Tuesday after the US President Donald Trump described the regime as a nuclear power, as we said, raising concern that the US could be moving towards recognizing North Korea as a nuclear state. Trump's defense secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth, also called North Korea a nuclear power during his state confirmation hearing last week. While it's unclear what Trump and Hegseth meant actually by this phrase, US officials have for a long time avoided this phrase that could signal a recognition of North Korea as a nuclear armed state, and the diplomatic and geopolitical consequences of this could be quite important. There is a growing debate as to whether the international community has to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. It's true that they have the weapon, or at least they are testing them, but recognizing it could really shift the balance in the geopolitical order in the region. For example, if France has nuclear weapons since the 60s and is still attached to a non-proliferation treaty, thus recognizing North Korea as a nuclear armed state would really be counterproductive for the global stability, not only in Asia, but also in the world, because that would mean if a country decides to develop its nuclear arsenal illegally and hold on to it long enough to finally be recognized, then other countries like Iran, for example, could say now my nuclear program is justified because North Korea has it and has been recognized by other countries. So it's a really slippery slope and dangerous path to recognize a country that developed its nuclear arsenal illegally as a nuclear state as any other country in the world.
Right. Soram, beyond the Korean peninsula, there have been quite a number of media reports about the absence of North Korean soldiers from the front lines in the battle between Ukraine and Russia. What more can you tell us?
As you mentioned, a lot of media reports suggest that North Korean troops have been absent from the front line in battle for weeks, possibly due to heavy casualties. According to the Ukrainian official, North Korean troops have not been seen at the front lines for about 3 weeks, unless in the Kursk region, where Ukrainian special forces are operating. The official suggested that North Korean units likely suffered from severe casualties. The New York Times also reported that North Korean forces have been missing from Kursk region for 2 weeks, citing Ukrainian and U.S. officials. According to the Ukrainian officials again, about 11 to 12,000 of North Korean troops have been sent to Russia, and just 3 months after, 1/3 of them have been lost. While Ukrainian forces admitted that North Korean troops fought fiercely, they struggled to coordinate with Russian forces. And even though North Korean soldiers were believed to be elite special forces, they were mainly used as foot soldiers in the open battlegrounds, where they were exposed to drone attacks. And Ukrainian officials said North Korean troops lacked training on how to counter drone attacks, which contributed to their heavy casualties. Neither Pyongyang nor Moscow have officially admitted the presence of North Korean troops in Russia, and both remain silent on their reported absence from the battleground recently.
Right, indeed. Meanwhile, Celio, last Friday, Mr. Trump, he claimed that he and Russian leader Vladimir Putin may soon take, and I quote, significant action to ending the violence in Ukraine. What precisely did he say, and what endgame do you envision?
Yeah, President Trump said on Friday his administration has already had a very serious discussion with Vladimir Putin about the war in Ukraine, and that he and Russian President Vladimir Putin could take significant action towards putting an end to this grinding conflict. Trump has said repeatedly during his campaign that he would have not allowed the war to happen in the first place if he had been in office, of course. And even though he was president as the fighting grew actually in 2016 after Russia annexed Crimea. So Trump, since returning to office, has criticized Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, saying that he should have made a deal with Putin before to avoid the conflict. In a recent interview on the Russian state television, Putin also praised Trump, saying he was a clever and a pragmatic man who is focused on U.S. interests. So it seems that both Trump and Putin get along together. It was already the case in Trump's first term. But also we can see, as Trump is criticizing Vladimir Zelensky, that Trump has really picked a side in this conflict. Now, the peace talks, honestly, I don't see exactly how that can work out in the long run. While Ukraine doesn't have the initiative in the conflict anymore, it's still not overrun and still inflicting quite a lot of casualties and to Russia, and also make them pay the high price for their economy overall. And to Russia, a peace agreement proposed could be that Russia would keep the ground they gained during the war in exchange for maybe a lift of economic sanction, and also maybe a promise that Putin will not be aggressive for the, 10 next year or 30 next years. But that would just sound like a ceasefire, not really a peace talk a long-lasting peace that everybody can agree on, especially not Putin, because for him it's not just about Ukraine, it's about Europe, in this whole geopolitical interest in Europe. The conflict doesn't end in Kyiv. And also, it's hard to see how Volodymyr Zelensky would actually accept to give part of his land after this war of aggression that's Putin led. So is it impossible to happen? No, maybe they couldn't work out a peace treaty. And for now, a ceasefire would be in both Ukraine and Russia's best interest. But building a long-lasting peace, I'm not sure if Trump can really make it with a botched deal.
Right, I see. Well, it's still an ongoing problem, so we'll see in the months ahead then. All right, Celio, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And Soram, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that is all the time we have for this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow.